Now that Leon is calmer, I need to see what happens when we introduce him to some of my dogs. So I'm gonna ask Kaylin to watch from a distance, so this way Leon doesn't get influenced by her nervous energy.
Nobody expected Cesar Millan's story to take this turn. At the height of his fame, the dog whisperer seemed to have everything. But behind the cameras, his world was unraveling in ways the public never saw.
And fear comes because of the lack of knowledge. Okay, and that's why I have a show, because I came to a country that they love dogs, but they didn't know dogs.
So what really happened to Cesar Millan? And how did one of television's biggest stars find himself fighting battles far beyond the world of dogs? Join us as we uncover the extraordinary truth behind his remarkable journey. The boy from Sinaloa who came with nothing. Cesar Felipe Millan Favela was born in Culiacan, Sinaloa, Mexico. He grew up on his grandfather's farm in a small rural town where his relationship with animals started before he had words for it. His grandfather, who worked the land with an authority that the young Cesar found magnetic, had a philosophy about animals that would later become the foundation of everything Millan built. The lesson was simple: never work against nature. Always gain trust first. Always gain respect before anything else. As a child, Cesar was obsessed with watching American television shows that came across the border, and that was how he formed a conviction so certain that it bordered on religion. He was going to go to America and become the best dog trainer in the world. In December 1990, at 21 years old, he told his mother he was leaving. She had reminded him that Christmas was the next day, but he left anyway. His father gave him $100, which he tucked into his sock before setting out to achieve the dream he had nursed for the longest time. He made his way to the border near Tijuana and paid a man to get him across. What awaited on the other side of that fence was not the America of Lassie and Rin Tin Tin. It was San Diego, where he spent weeks sleeping under a bridge in Tijuana. Too poor to move further north, too determined to go back. He eventually made it to Los Angeles, speaking no English, knowing nobody, with no formal training in anything. He found work at a dog grooming salon in Inglewood. He walked packs of dogs, eventually up to 40 at a time, through some of the roughest neighborhoods in Los Angeles, and discovered that the philosophy his grandfather had given him on a Mexican farm worked just as well on the streets of Inglewood as it had in Sinaloa. He did not bark commands. He did not fight the dogs. He projected a calm authority that the animals responded to before he had done anything specific to earn it. Word began to move. People started seeking him out. Among the people who found their way to him was a young actress named Jada Pinkett Smith, who became one of his earliest clients and something closer to a guardian angel. She recognized what she was watching, told him that if he wanted to be on television, he had to learn English first, and sent a tutor to his house. He learned English. He built the Pacific Point Canine Academy. He got a profile in the Los Angeles Times that ran on a Sunday. By Monday morning, the article said, there was a line of producers outside his door trying to get a show made. The show that eventually came out of all of that groundwork premiered on National Geographic Channel on August 16, 2004. Dog Whisperer with Cesar Millan was what happened when a genuine philosophy of animal behavior met a network willing to let it breathe on screen. The concept was as unforced as its subject. People with problem dogs called Cesar. Cesar came to their homes. Cesar fixed the problem. It ran 9 seasons, aired in over 80 countries, and turned Cesar Millan into one of the most recognizable television personalities on the planet. The books that followed, Cesar's Way, in 2006, which became a New York Times bestseller, extended his reach far beyond the people who happened to have cable. By the late 2000s, His name had become shorthand for the entire concept of dog rehabilitation, a kind of brand identity so complete that even people who had never seen his show knew who the dog whisperer was. But while the audience saw a man who was calm in every situation, whose very presence seemed to settle the most anxious animal in the room, the real Cesar Millan was navigating a world behind the cameras that was considerably less tranquil. Because almost from the beginning, the scientific community had something very specific to say about what he was doing, and what they were saying wasn't a compliment. So what exactly was the problem with his methods, and why did the experts get so loud so early? The science that said he was doing it wrong. The first complaint on record came from the American Humane Society, and it arrived in 2006, just 2 years into the show's run. The organization sent a letter to the National Geographic Channel detailing their objections to the training techniques being demonstrated on Dog Whisperer. They used words like inhumane and potentially harmful. They cited specific episodes, including one in which Millan appeared to asphyxiate a dog by hanging it with a choke chain before pinning it to the ground by its neck. They asked the network to consider what it was broadcasting into the homes of millions of viewers who might then attempt to replicate what they were watching. However, the network did not pull the show. It ran for another 6 seasons. What animal behaviorists and cognitive scientists had been publishing for years, with gathering force, was that the dominance framework was built on faulty foundations. Mark Durr, a canine expert who had written extensively on dog behavior, published a piece in the New York Times specifically challenging Millan's methods, calling them an assortment of outdated theories that had long since been disproven by the actual science of animal behavior. The director of the Animal Behavior Clinic at Tufts University accused National Geographic of setting dog training back 20 years. British television personality Alan Titchmarsh walked off a set after Millan described his techniques during an interview, saying he thought the methods were inappropriate. Steve Dale, a certified animal behavior consultant, started calling Millan the dog screamer. The Association of Pet Dog Trainers issued position statements against punishment-based training. The opposition was not a fringe concern. It represented the mainstream of professional animal behavior science by the mid-2000s, and it was getting louder with every season. Cesar's response was consistent across every interview and every criticism. His methods worked. He could point to the dogs before and then after. Dogs that had been labeled unadoptable and violent, that had bitten people, that had been days from euthanasia, now walking calmly beside their owners. That tension between the evidence of results and the theoretical framework that produced them never fully resolved, and it remained the defining professional controversy of his entire career. But before the scientific debate had time to fully mature in public consciousness, something happened in his personal life in 2010 that changed everything. Something that had nothing to do with dog training and everything to do with what it costs a person to build an empire at the speed Cesar Millan had built one. The year everything fell apart at once. By 2010, Cesar Millan had been famous for 6 years, successful by any external measure imaginable. The show was in its 7th season. The books were selling. The speaking tours were filling arenas. The Dog Psychology Center in Santa Clarita was operational and internationally known. His name was worth something very significant in the entertainment world. His face was on magazine covers. And then, inside the span of a few months in 2010, everything he thought he had built came apart simultaneously. His beloved pit bull Daddy died. Daddy had been more than a television prop. He had been Millan's constant companion since the mid-1990s, the living proof of his philosophy. the dog through whom he had demonstrated calm, assertive energy in hundreds of sessions. Millan had described Daddy as his source of calmness. In his own words, when Daddy died, he lost the thing that had always kept him grounded. The grief hit in a way that professional success had left him unprepared for. Then, Illusion, his wife of 16 years, filed for divorce. They had met through mutual friends, married in 1994, and built the business together. She had eventually become co-CEO of Cesar Millan, Inc., designed the Illusion collar that became one of the company's signature products, and served as executive producer on the show. The marriage was not just personal, it was architectural to everything he had constructed. When she filed citing irreconcilable differences in July 2010, the professional and personal unraveled together. His sons stopped talking to him. The divorce had severed the family structure that had been his primary source of identity and stability. Two boys who had grown up watching their father become famous were suddenly not speaking to him. The weight of that loss, the silence from the children, was something Millan has spoken about with a rawness in every subsequent interview that suggested it never fully healed. And then came the financial revelation that added cruelty to everything else happening simultaneously. He discovered that he owned almost none of his own shows. The Dog Whisperer, the intellectual property that had his face on it, his voice in it, and his philosophy running through every frame of it. The rights belonged largely to the production structure that had built it, not to him. He had not understood, in the beginning, what he was signing. The farm boy from Sinaloa, who had crossed the border with $100 in his sock, had become the subject of an empire, not quite the owner of one. The financial losses were in the millions. The accumulation of all of it produced something that all the calm, assertive energy in the world could not fix. He went into a depression so severe that he lost significant amounts of weight. He stopped sleeping properly. He described feeling that he had lost the most important thing, which was his family, and that without it, nothing else had meaning. He took a whole bunch of pills and hoped not to wake up. His sons found him before it was too late and called for help. He was rushed to hospital and survived. He later described waking up in a ward full of patients who loved his show as the beginning of finding his way back, a disorienting but ultimately humanizing experience. Here was the Dog Whisperer, the man who had spent years telling millions of people how to project calm authority, lying in a hospital bed surrounded by people who had watched him do it and feeling none of it himself. He was offered antidepressants. He declined them, choosing instead to apply his own philosophy to his own recovery. Exercise, work, the direct experience of being with animals rather than the mediated distance of medication. He was engaged to his partner, Jahira Dar, whom he had begun dating in August 2010, within months of the worst of it. He described her as a grounding force during the entire rebuilding period. The comeback, when it came, was slower and quieter than the original rise. But just as he was stabilizing personally and professionally, the controversies that had been building since the show's first season found a specific incident that brought them all to a head. And this one involved a pig. The pig incident that almost ended everything. On February 26, 2016, an episode of Cesar 911 aired on Nat Geo Wild that produced the most explosive public controversy of Millan's career. The episode followed Simon, a French Bulldog Terrier mix that had a documented history of aggression toward pigs. He had already killed two of his owner's pet pigs before Millan was called in. During the training session at Millan's Dog Psychology Center in Santa Clarita, Simon was put on a long lead to assess his behavior around a live pot-bellied pig. The dog broke away and bit the pig's ear. The pig bled. The training session was captured on film and aired to an audience of millions. The internet responded within hours. A petition calling for the cancellation of Cesar 911 gathered tens of thousands of signatures. Animal rights activists generated a flood of complaints to the Los Angeles County Department of Animal Care and Control. The word used in the complaints was bait, the claim being that Millan had deliberately used a live pig to incite a dog with a history of pig-related violence, constituting animal cruelty. Animal control officials arrived at the Dog Psychology Center to investigate. A formal inquiry was launched. The production team and National Geographic responded that a clip circulating online had removed the full context of the encounter, that the pig had not been used as bait, that precautions had been in place, and that after the incident, the pig healed quickly with no lasting distress. They released additional footage to support that framing. Cesar cooperated fully with the investigation and stated publicly that he understood why the law required it, that animal welfare officials were doing their job and doing it right. The investigation concluded in April 2016. The district attorney's office found no evidence that the pig had been used as bait and confirmed the incident appeared to be accidental. Millan issued a statement saying he was pleased but not surprised. The show continued, but the pig incident had done something to his public standing that the official clearance could not fully undo. It had concentrated years of accumulated scientific criticism and online skepticism into a single, shareable, emotionally potent clip of a dog biting a pig's ear that could be watched out of context by anyone with an internet connection. The debate about whether Millan's methods were ethical had been abstract and academic for most of a decade. That clip made it feel immediate and visceral. The petition signers and the complaint filers had not waited for an investigation to form their opinions. The damage to his image, particularly among the growing demographic of viewers who followed developments in animal welfare science and social media activism simultaneously, was real and lasting. And it arrived alongside something else, a lawsuit from a former gymnast named Lydia Mattis that alleged his pit bull Junior had attacked her in 2017 at a Los Angeles building Millan owned, causing injuries severe enough to end her competitive career. Lydia's filing also claimed that Junior had previously mauled Queen Latifah's dog, and that Cesar had attempted to cover up the animal's history of aggression. Cesar disputed the allegations. However, the lawsuit already added legal complexity to an already embattled public profile at precisely the moment he was trying to rebuild from his personal crisis. Together, the pig controversy and the subsequent lawsuit defined the mid-2010s as the period when the gap between the dog whisperer's global brand and the questions surrounding it reached its widest point. The original show ended in 2012 after 9 seasons. Cesar 911, his follow-up series, continued until 2016. And then came the quieter years, the years of rebuilding in the space between the attention and the next chapter. So how did a man with this specific accumulation of losses and controversies manage to return at all? The comeback that surprised everyone. Cesar Millan did not disappear after the controversies of the mid-2010s. He pivoted toward the thing that was always real, even when everything around it got complicated. He returned to television in 2021 with Cesar Millan, Better Human, Better Dog on National Geographic, which continued the core format of his original show. Real cases, real people, real dogs, but with a framing that explicitly centered the human side of the equation. The title said it directly: Better Human, Better Dog. The message was that behavioral problems in animals were almost always rooted in the humans around them, and that the work was never solely about the dog. Season 4 premiered on April 12th 2024. Season 5 followed on August 16, 2024, marking 20 years of Millan's presence on screen. The show was substantive, well-produced, and drew a genuinely engaged audience. Then, without announcement or explanation that satisfied fans, the show vanished from Disney+, where it had been streaming. Disney, when asked, said it was a business decision. They said fans still had unprecedented access to a wide variety of Disney's film and television entertainment. That explanation landed about as well as could be expected, which was not particularly well. Millan kept moving. In late 2024, he launched Walking with Cesar, a podcast blending personal stories, dog training content, and mindset coaching, an extension of his reach into a format that required no network contract and no production company between him and his audience. In March 2025, he launched the Pack Leadership Community, a live virtual coaching membership through his Training Caesar's Way platform that gave members weekly direct access to him for Q&A sessions and behavior demonstrations. He partnered with XL Brands on a new pet product line called Trust, Respect, Love by Cesar Millan, entering the brand's portfolio alongside names like Halston and Isaac Mizrahi. He performed at the San Diego County Fair in June 2025, demonstrating training techniques live to an audience that showed up specifically for him. By early 2026, his Dog Psychology Center in Santa Clarita remained operational, a 43-acre facility offering hands-on rehabilitation and in-person training. He had over 21 million social media followers. The books were still in print and still selling. The name, despite everything, was still worth something. Does the controversy around his methods matter more than the dogs he saved from euthanasia? And when a man crosses a border illegally with $100 in his sock and ends up being watched by hundreds of millions of people in 80 countries, what exactly does his story say about the distance between where you start and where a single conviction about your purpose can take you?